Irving really was one of the most popular historians from the sort of 1960s to the 1990s. His books sold in their hundred thousands.
They did, yes.
And most famous, I think, were his first book, The Destruction of Dresden, which in itself is I would say, another part of history that's or part of revisionist history that's re-emerging that we should look at. But also his biography of Hitler was extremely popular. So back in the 90s, David Irving was sort of a household name, am I right in thinking, not for being revisionist necessarily, but actually was taken seriously. Am I wrong?
Well, his book, Hitler's War, which came out in the 70s, certainly did very well. It was published by Penguin Books and had a considerable success. And as I said, he writes in a racy style and a kind of pacey, punchy narrative. But that was already attacked by serious historians who knew what they were talking about for some instances of falsifying the evidence. Didn't seem to do him too much damage. But within a few years of that, he went over in the 80s from being a relatively conventional historian who just was remarkable for the very kind view he took of Hitler, to a fully blown Holocaust denier. Now that we actually all agreed in the case that came before the High Court in the year 2000 that Holocaust denial is, first of all, a denial that 6 million Jews were killed deliberately on Hitler's orders in World War II, not just in gas chambers, but in shootings, starvation, and many other means of murder. But it was a deliberate one. There was a plan, a program of killing them. It didn't happen just by chance, as some massacres in wartime on a vastly smaller scale do. There's evidence, both the evidence of people who were involved in it on both sides, so former camp commandants, camp guards, and so on, and survivors, the Jewish victims, because they were killed. The 6 million Jews are killed because they were Jews. It's a classic piece of genocide. And Irving also said that all the evidence was actually concocted by Jews after the war. So that's Holocaust denial for you. And the court case in the year 2000 proved comprehensively that these ideas were wrong and they rested on a falsification of the historical evidence. Irving was then so his lawsuit was rejected by the High Court, and he was ordered to pay the costs, which amounted to over £3 million. And he was then immediately he declared himself bankrupt because he'd not paid any of it at all. But that was the court case. It's in a movie called Denial, made a few years later, in which I'm played by a man who I think should have lost weight before he went in front of the camera, actually. But
not nearly as dashing as the man who sits before me today.
But then, I mean, but it was really well done. It was true. David Hare wrote the screenplay, and I've talked to him about it, and it was true to the spirit and the letter of the trial, mostly, always completely.
So, actually, Irving was saying things when it comes to Holocaust denial, and this is from your book, but you've quoted him saying that every survivor of the Holocaust is living proof that there was no Nazi extermination program. And he would also imply that they were doing this for financial reasons. How much money have you made from the piece of ink on your arm, which may indeed be real tattooed ink? And
he's referring there to when prisoners were admitted to Auschwitz as prisoners, they were tattooed with a number actually on their wrist, Most of the Jews who were sent to Auschwitz didn't have that because they were sent straight to the gas chambers. But those who the Nazis thought were capable of work, they were then as slave labor. They were then tattooed.
And he would also he made this rather horrid joke that he would. This is a quote of Irving. I'm forming an association especially dedicated to all of these liars, the ones who tried to kid people that they were in these concentration camps. It's called the Auschwitz Survivors of the Holocaust and Other Liars, Arseholes. This was a live speech in 1990. So he was pretty explicitly ridiculing.
Oh yes, absolutely.
The Holocaust,
Yeah.
It's not just denying it happened, but depending on what scene you find him in, what audience he is with.
Yeah.
If you see him in a BBC interview, he tries to be serious. If you hear him in these other things, he's actually ridiculing the Holocaust. Yeah. So take me to the court case itself. I think this is important because it's what happened actually in 2000 after when he sued Deborah Lipstadt and Penguin Books for her 1993 book, Denying the Holocaust, for her, as you say, calling him a Holocaust denier. People look back at this and will say it was a free speech issue, but what's important to remember is that he was suing her. So it was her free speech that was actually in question, and he was suing her for libel. Yeah. That's correct.
That's right. If he succeeded, then Penguin who published it in the UK in 1994, and he sued in 96. So the law moves rather slowly, so it didn't come before the courts until the year 2000. Had he won, then Penguin would have had to withdraw the book and had all the copies pulped and promise never to publish anything similar again, and that would have affected all other publishers as well. So you could not have, in effect, called somebody a Holocaust denier after that. So Irving was trying to suppress free speech. And indeed, so nervous were the publishers that my own book, based on my court submission as an expert witness,
lying about Hitler.
It's called about lying about Hitler in the US, telling lies about Hitler in the UK. But they 6 publishers rejected it because Irving was writing to them all, threatening to sue them for libel if they published my book. And in the end, my book was published in the UK by a small left-wing publisher called Verso. And it was said to be the only book that my literary agent had negotiated a contract for that did not have an advance on royalties. It was just, in fact, Verso were so, and it sold about 5,000 copies in just a few months, and then after that, really the interest died down.
But it's interesting because one of the accusations against you or that Irving made against everyone is that the establishment was out to get him. But here it seems quite the contrary, which is the establishment was
absolutely
not letting you publish.
The result of it wasn't the establishment; it was just publishers who exist on quite small margins of profit and were just terrified of having to fork out, even though the Mishcon de Rea and Anthony Julius, who ran Lipstadt's defense, offered to represent any publisher for free, as they call it, pro bono, if Irving sued. But it still might involve a bit of expense because you have to hire a barrister and so on. And if they did all that for free, there was still a danger that Irving might win, even though the action was what they call a strikeout. So the issues had all been decided at the main trial. So Irving couldn't then have an appeal and so on, and on legal grounds, and he couldn't refight it all with pretty foregone conclusion. I want to say I'm not part of the establishment. Nobody tells me what to think or what to write. And what happened in the trial was that the lines of free speech were kept open. Nobody was telling Irving what to write or what to publish. He could go on doing what he'd done. It's just that people were not believing it anymore.
before the trial, as you explain in your book, it took you and 2 researchers 18 months to go through the dozens of publications of Irving, including the reissues, the different translations, getting to exploring all the footnotes, going to the source material that he was quoting, trying to find the originals, the mistranslations by him of the originals. This was a momentous task and eventually ended with you presenting a 740-page report before you were the chief, I should note, expert witness in this. And so this is quite interesting to me because in the age of conspiracy theories, and I've been in a situation where I've either contemplated or been in interviews with people who have these such ideas, it's a hell of a lot of work.
It is,
to get to the bottom of these ideas or these claims. Can you tell me about that process? And was it enjoyable as a historian, or was it frustrating? Was it? What did you learn about the sort of process of Irving and the mind of these types of historians?
Well, one of the things that the film got wrong was at the beginning, it has me and my 2 assistants who were actually 2 of my PhD students, saying that we're raring to go, we want to nail Irving and so on, we're going to get him. Not true at all. We had no idea because none of us had read any of his work at that stage at the beginning, because his works are not useful for teaching in universities. You need to have ideas and arguments and theses for students to be able to grapple with. And Irving is just pure narrative without any real interpretation or ideas, apart from the fact that Hitler was basically a good guy, which is not really a serious point and not really worth discussing. So it was a fantastic experience. We'd parceled up the work, so we had these 19 instances or clusters of evidence, things like the Kristallnacht, the Reich pogrom of 10th November 1930.
If I may, when you say a cluster of evidence, do you mean a cluster of ideas?
No, evidence, pieces of documents, but essentially documents.
Okay.
So we parceled it out because he said this is the strongest points of his thesis, that Hitler was not involved in the Holocaust, or that Hitler tried to stop it, and he didn't really seem to realize there was a contradiction between those. If he's not involved, how could he try and stop it if he didn't know anything about it? But anyway, leaving that on one side. So we parceled this out, and we had meetings every couple of weeks, myself and my assistants, and they would come in and say, you'd never, waving a copy of one of his books, you'd never realize, what he's done here in this particular instance, how he's manipulated, say, changed the dates on a well-recorded conversation between Hitler and Ribbentrop, his foreign minister, on the one hand, and the regent of Hungary, Admiral Horthy, an ally of Hitler's, where Hitler and Ribbentrop were trying to persuade Horthy to hand over hundreds of thousands of Hungarian Jews to be sent to Auschwitz, which in the end only happened when the Nazis invaded the country and forced that, and 440,000 were murdered in the gas chambers of Auschwitz. And looking at the record of those conversations, published, widely available, Hitler appeared, as it were, in a much more harmless light, because Irving changed around the dates of the different conversations. So many other things of that sort was all a very exciting and engrossing project.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Winston Marshall Show. You can click here to watch the full episode, and for more clips like this one, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, be well.